Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, today I want to talk about which system has given me more problems over the times I've been using Linux. Has it been Arch or has it been Debian based? Does this change my recommendation for which I would use and what I might tell you to use? And so, of course, I generally recommend Linux Mint, which is running behind me. That is my preferred distribution for most of my solid production work. However, I use lighter operating systems for my writing computer because that is a much lower spec machine, and Cinnamon runs a little bit sluggish once your resources drop down to the 2 gig range, like that computer happens to have. Now, I've also, however, have been using Arch for about 18 months. And Arch, of course, gets updated a lot more than Linux Mint does. And when I'm working on things, a lot of the reason is the Arch computer is not critical for my office infrastructure. This Linux Mint computer behind me is critical for infrastructure. And so if I update something and a package breaks, it causes me a lot of extra time to figure out how to get everything fixed. Now, this happened recently because I actually went through my office and I pushed all updates across all systems, except I didn't update my NAS. So I did that one a month or two ago. And that posed some problems for me too. That's Debian based. Linux Mint posed a couple problems. Now, the only problem is not due to the Linux Mint people. Let me be very clear about that. It wasn't due to the Debian people. It was due to a misconfigured package for the current stable PPA for Audacity, which, if you are using Audacity and using the current stable Ubuntu PPA for Audacity, you may have found that plugins have broken. There is a fix for that. It does appear to be a misconfiguration in that particular package. So let that be whatever that happens to be. But what I want to say is that in this time, I also have Arch running. Now, if I leave Arch unupdated, as long as I leave Linux Mint unupdated, it's going to crash and burn like there's no tomorrow. You don't want to do that. If you're running Arch, you want to run regular updates. And so I do run regular updates. I run them about every week, maybe every other week on Arch, depending on what my week looks like. If something breaks in that system, not a big deal. I deal with it. If it's undealable, if it crashes the system, I just boot into a Linux Mint build that's actually inside that computer as well until I have time to deal with it. I don't actually lose a lot in that time. Okay? Now, with this, I want to point out the couple issues that I have had on the Arch system doing updates. There was an issue around December with POMC. Now, I'm running Arch Labs that does not have POMC by default. I went ahead and installed it because I do like POMC there. I do like being reminded that there's an update, whether or not I care to do anything about it right now. And I do like the POMC system, so I went ahead and installed that on my Arch Labs computer. And it works great. But there was that time in December when an update bricked POMC. However, every time something breaks, the Arch community rallies around it, fixes it, and pushes out either a fix to the package or at least a fix that you can do on the Arch wiki. And that's exactly what I did. I went through and I patched POMC when I had the time to do so, and everything's back up and running and everything is fine. Now, there was another issue with Audacity recently. Now, it doesn't have to do with Audacity itself. It had to do with the Audacity, the way it was packaged with the new Ubuntu system. However, a similar bug, maybe it had to do with Audacity, a similar bug hit Arch for about a day until it drove somebody crazy, and an Arch guy went ahead and fixed it and pushed it out. By the time I recognized there was a problem, which happened about 3 weeks ago, if I remember from the time I'm recording this video. But since I don't update my computers a lot, I kept on using the same version for a long time, no problems. I updated my Linux Mint computer and it broke Audacity, which is something I actually need for my workflow. The problem is that there seems to be a misconfiguration in where it's looking for plugins and it can't see, thus activate the plugins in your system. Apparently Arch suffered from that same bug for a day or two, but since I update regularly, I tested Arch on the same version, 2.4.1, and indeed Arch works. I can install and enable my plugins without a problem. Now, on Linux Mint, wasn't quite the case. But as any good Linux user, you have a problem, you do some internet searching. And I actually found on the Linux, no, it was on the Audacity forums. So on the Audacity forums said, hey, this is a problem, Linux Mint, using this PPA, so I have a newer version, can't install plugins anymore. The guy said, hey, I ran the same problem. Apparently it's a problem with that PPA. There's a reported fix. The fix is, which you can find online, and if you need that, let me know. I'll be glad to drop that in the comments if anybody needs that. I'm not going to drop it in unless somebody asks though. But what you need to basically do is you need to fetch the latest version of Audacity from Git. You need to rewrite a couple of the files, and there's like 6 lines of code to do all this. You might also need to install Git onto your system as well. If you run that code, you will have the latest Audacity and the ability to install your plugins, which is an excellent thing. That being said, which system have I had more issues with, and which system has been easier to fix? The issues I come in with on Linux Mint when I update, and I'm trying to think, all of the problems I've had with Linux Mint have actually been Audacity issues. They keep on changing some things in the UI. Arch, also, I'm going to get those same UI changes because Arch rolls, but Arch in 18 months, I have not had a mission critical failure in the Arch system. So which method is better? Well, apparently, Arch fixes itself faster. While it might have an issue with breaking some bleeding edge stuff on a few rare cases, like a Debian type system does, they fix things way faster. Now, if such a bug is identified, it generally doesn't even get rolled out in the Debian-based systems, but it could. And if it does, it doesn't get patched. This was almost a month ago with Audacity. People have reached out to the person who packages that PPA, no response, for whatever that takes. So, which system updates faster? Well, Arch is actually going to give you, probably in the long term, a more stable system because bugs are identified and fixed much quicker. However, I still am not going to change my recommendation from Linux Mint because Arch also constantly rolls package versions, and that is the thing that I don't like. I don't want my UI changing. I don't want a lot of things in my workflow production systems moving around. There have been some critical issues I've talked about in the past. One of those was LibreOffice. I'm a professional writer. LibreOffice moved a whole lot of things from one menu to another menu, and I think it was between version 5 and version 6. Yeah, that's called retraining yourself. You instinctively go up to one menu and find it's not there. Where'd it go? Oh, they moved it to the other menu. Audacity did the same thing. They took what used to be called chains under your edit menu and changed their names to macro under the tools menu without documenting it that I could find. I eventually found it. I was like, oh, and it worked. Nevertheless, I like my main work production systems to remain stable. That's why I use the Debian-based systems. As long as I'm not using the bleeding edge PPAs, I generally don't have any problems with them. So with that being said, I still recommend using Linux Mint out of the box. But I'm finding if you're looking for a system that's going to resolve and fix the bugs quicker and you don't care if your UI changes, you don't care if it's the latest version, definitely in that case, go with the Arch-based system. I promise you, it's not much more difficult. Those are kind of my takes. Those are a little bit of the experiences I've had in looking with and in playing with and experimenting with a few different software packages recently. And all this is because I needed to go ahead and look for some software that I'll talk about in another video. All that being said, every single time I had a problem, I checked the Arch machine. The Arch machine works perfectly. Linux Mint, not always. Again, not Linux Mint's fault. It was because I was using bleeding edge PPAs on top of it. That might seem to be your problem. So whatever that's worth, let me know your thoughts on all that kind of stuff. And have you had problems on Debian-based systems that are not problems on Arch systems or vice versa? Let me know the answers to those in the comments down below.